What the mind of man can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But what if what your mind believes is fear? And what if it has conceived is insecurity? In that case, what you achieve is precisely what you fear most. Have you ever realized that fear doesn't need to knock you down to stop you? It just needs to convince you not to try. And that's how thousands of people spend their entire lives trapped, believing they aren't ready yet. That they need to wait for the right moment, the right courage, the right sign. But that sign never comes. Today you will understand how to transform insecurity into strength, exactly as Napoleon Hill did when he lost everything and had to start over from scratch. Fear rarely shouts, it whispers, it disguises itself as prudence, as logic, as better to wait a little longer. And that's exactly where it wins. It doesn't need to knock you down, it just needs to convince you not to try. How many times have you caught yourself thinking it wasn't the right time yet, that you needed to prepare more, save more money, gain more confidence? And all the while, time passed, and nothing changed. Research from the National Institute of Mental Health shows that the brain reacts the same way to real and imaginary threats. In other words, you feel fear about something that hasn't even happened, and that fear is enough to paralyze your actions and create a cycle of self-sabotage. Napoleon Hill lived this cycle firsthand. After dedicating years to studying the greatest geniuses of his era, he lost everything: reputation, money, purpose. It was the kind of downfall that shatters anyone's faith. But in the silence of defeat, he discovered a powerful truth. Rock bottom isn't the end, it's the starting point. Hill realized that fear wasn't the enemy, it was the teacher. He understood that if he had the courage to face it, he could transform pain into wisdom and doubt into direction. It was from this experience that Think and Grow Rich was born, a book that speaks not only of financial wealth, but of the courage to think differently when everything around you seems to crumble. How many times have you also believed that fear was a sign to stop, when in fact it was a call to move forward? Every time you retreat, fear gains ground. It feeds on inertia, on waiting, on it's not time yet. And the truth is, it will never disappear completely. It merely changes form, waiting for the next opportunity to paralyze you. That's why Hill used to say that our limitations are not in the external world, but in the way we think. It's not the obstacle that holds you back. It's the idea that it's insurmountable. Think about the times you looked in the mirror and thought, "This isn't for me." How many times have you repeated phrases like, "I'm not good enough. That's just for a lucky few. I've already wasted my time." These beliefs, repeated in silence, become the invisible bars of your mind. And that's how fear conquers. It doesn't need to prove you'll fail, it just needs to convince you that trying is useless. But fear isn't a fact, it's a mental construct. And every construct can be deconstructed. Science has already demonstrated that the brain is plastic. It remodels itself according to the experiences and thoughts we choose to cultivate. This means that every time you act, even with fear, you are literally reprogramming your mind. You are teaching yourself that pain isn't unbearable, that uncertainty isn't fatal, and that error doesn't define who you are. Hill used to say that fear is like a shadow. It appears gigantic when you run from it, but it dissipates when you approach it. He learned this not in his days of glory, but in the days of darkness, when all seemed lost. And it's precisely at that point, when you face fear head-on, that true transformation begins. It's there that you stop being a prisoner of doubt and become the creator of your own courage. And now, ask yourself honestly, how many opportunities have you already let pass due to fear of what others might think? How many dreams have you shelved because you believed it wasn't the right time yet? And what if what you call lack of time is just fear disguised as reason? Think about this, because while you wait for fear to leave, life doesn't wait for you. How many times have you told yourself, "I'll start when I'm ready"? This phrase, which seems prudent, is actually a trap disguised as wisdom. Waiting for the right moment is the biggest thief of opportunities there is, because the truth is simple. You will never feel completely prepared. Confidence isn't a prerequisite for action, it's its result. It's like a muscle. It only strengthens when it's used. According to research from the University of Scranton, 92% of people don't achieve their New Year's goals, and it's not due to lack of talent or intelligence, but due to fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of discovering they could have won but chose not to try. Napoleon Hill observed this same pattern in the great figures he studied. None of them waited for courage to arrive before starting. They started while trembling. Hill saw in Andrew Carnegie, his mentor, a living example of this. Carnegie was born into poverty, without access to education and with no guarantees of success. But he possessed a principle that transformed his life. Act before you feel ready. He began by delivering telegrams on foot, not knowing that that simple step would put him on the path to becoming one of the wealthiest men in history. He didn't wait for confidence. He built it through practice, one risk at a time, one decision a day. And the most interesting thing is that science confirms this logic. The human brain needs experiences to reconfigure its emotional responses. Every time you act, even feeling insecure, you are teaching your mind that fear is not a mortal enemy. That's how self-confidence is born, not in the comfort of theory, but in the discomfort of practice. The same study showed that people who act consistently develop a more realistic perception of themselves and exhibit lower levels of anxiety, because they stop relying on certainties and start trusting in their own capacity for adaptation. Think about how many times you had an exciting idea and minutes later an internal voice began to question, "What if I fail? What if it doesn't work out? What if they laugh at me?" This is the trap of analysis without action. The idea loses strength, enthusiasm turns into guilt, and you end up convincing yourself that it wasn't the right time. And the more often you repeat this pattern, the stronger it becomes. Fear, when fed by waiting, grows in silence. But when faced by action, it begins to lose its power. Every small action you take, even without knowing the outcome, is a declaration to your subconscious. I trust myself. And that confidence changes everything. The way you speak, behave, make decisions, and face the world. It's the same process Napoleon Hill experienced. When he wrote Think and Grow Rich, he had no guarantees of success nor financial support. He simply decided to act, and it was the movement that brought clarity. Therefore, the biggest mistake isn't to try and fail. The biggest mistake is to wait until you feel ready. The clarity you seek won't come from doubt. It will come from experience. Fear doesn't disappear before action. It disappears because of it. And if there's something you've been postponing, that call, that project, that first step, this is the moment. Do it even with fear, because every time you act, fear shrinks and confidence grows. So here's the challenge. Over the next 7 days, do something that fear has been preventing you from doing. It could be something small, a conversation, a decision, an attempt. But do it. On the 8th day, look back and realize fear didn't leave beforehand. It dissipated when you moved. That's the secret of those who win. They don't wait for courage. They create it. Failure is one of the greatest mirrors of the soul. It reflects not what you've lost, but what you still need to learn. From an early age, most people are taught to fear mistakes, to be ashamed of falling, to hide their flaws. We grow up hearing that failure is synonymous with weakness, that error stains one's reputation, that failure is a final stop. But the truth is the opposite. Failure is just a comma in the middle of your story. It's the point where life asks, do you still believe in yourself? And the answer you give to that question determines the rest of your journey. Napoleon Hill discovered this truth in the most painful way possible. After years of work and research, he found himself without money, without support, and without direction. He was persecuted, discredited, and almost forgotten. Anyone would have given up. But Hill didn't interpret failure as the end, but rather as the beginning of something new. He understood that every defeat carried a hidden lesson and that it was his duty to find it. From this understanding, one of the most powerful teachings he left behind was born. Every adversity carries with it the seed of an equivalent or greater benefit. And it was from this seed that Think and Grow Rich blossomed, a book that inspired millions, because it was born not from victory, but from downfall and the courage to start anew. The problem is that most people never water that seed. They see failure as a sentence, not as fertile ground. They stop in the face of pain without realizing that it is precisely pain that shapes character, strengthens the mind, and awakens true potential. Research in behavioral psychology confirms that the human brain develops resilience when exposed to adversity. It's contact with error, with rejection, with frustration that creates the ability to move forward. Fleeing from failure is the same as hindering one's own growth. Think about the time something went wrong and you interpreted it as a punishment. A business that didn't succeed, a relationship that ended, a project that didn't turn out as expected. What if, instead of seeing it as an end, you had seen it as an instruction? Because that's what failure truly is, a master in disguise. It teaches you what victory cannot. When you succeed, you merely confirm what you already knew. When you falter, you learn what you needed to know. Alexander Graham Bell, the inventor of the telephone, serves as a prime example of this very principle. Before he revolutionized the world, he was ridiculed, ignored, and had countless prototypes destroyed. Each setback felt like a door closing, but in reality, these were steps on the same path. He didn't view mistakes as walls, but as building blocks. And this distinction is precisely what separates those who triumph from those who surrender, the meaning each individual assigns to the fall. Hill often asserted that temporary defeat is nature's instrument to test human perseverance. And if you observe carefully, you'll realize that the most transformative moments of your life originated from something that, at first glance, seemed like a failure. The rejection that compelled you to seek something better. The error that forced you to think differently. The loss that taught you to cherish what truly matters. During the Great Depression, Hill endured days when he barely had enough to eat. Humiliation, despair, and fear were constant companions. But it was there on that cold ground of uncertainty that he realized failure isn't the opposite of success. It is its foundation. Without failing, there is no growth. Without a fall, there is no strength. And without mistakes, there is no wisdom. Modern science confirms this. Studies on emotional resilience reveal that individuals who confront and constructively process their setbacks demonstrate higher levels of long-term well-being and performance. They learn to use pain as fuel, not as a chain. Failure doesn't define them, it refines them. Now, reflect on something you perceive as a failure in your own life. Perhaps a dream that never materialized, an opportunity that slipped away. What if that failure wasn't the end, but the beginning of something greater that you cannot yet perceive? What if it was merely shaping you for something that demands the strongest version of yourself? This is what Hill understood, that life doesn't punish you, it prepares you. The difference between the loser and the winner lies not in the number of falls, but in the number of fresh starts. Those who give up believe that a mistake is the end. Those who win understand that a mistake is a rehearsal, and each time you rise after falling, something within you changes. You begin to see yourself as capable. You prove to yourself that it's not the failure that defines you, but the response you give to it. And it is this response that transforms fear into strength, pain into wisdom, and failure into fuel. Because ultimately, every fall is an opportunity in disguise. It's up to you to decide whether you will treat it as an end or as the beginning of your next victory. Confidence doesn't stem from security. It arises from movement. It doesn't emerge on tranquil days, but in those moments when you choose to act even while trembling, when everything inside you screams to wait a little longer, but you take the step anyway. It's at that instant that self-confidence begins to be forged, not as an idea, but as living proof that you are capable. The American Psychological Association has demonstrated that self-efficacy, defined as the belief in one's capacity to act, strengthens each time we confront a challenge, even one on a small scale. This means that every time you act despite fear, you are training your brain to understand that the danger is not as great as it seemed. You are, little by little, reprogramming your mind to respond with courage where there was once hesitation. Napoleon Hill believed that fear only holds power when it encounters passivity. He maintained that the secret to human progress has always resided in a simple principle: act first, believe later. Courage is not the absence of fear. It is the decision to move forward even with its presence. And this decision changes everything. Because while fear paralyzes you, action liberates you. The mind cannot maintain two opposing emotions in equilibrium. When you move, fear loses its grip. When you hesitate, it grows. Theodore Roosevelt lived this truth before becoming President of the United States. He was born frail, asthmatic, shy, and physically limited. He was the antithesis of a leader's image, but he consciously decided to rewrite his own identity. He began to expose himself to discomfort, engaging in strenuous physical activities, facing intense debates, and above all, forcing himself to act even when he felt afraid. He didn't wait for the right moment. He created the moment. Over time, this discipline transformed not only his body, but also his mind. Roosevelt proved, as Hill affirmed, that confidence is the accumulated result of small, daring actions repeated over time. How many times have you waited to feel ready to act? How many opportunities have you lost because you believed it wasn't the right time yet? The truth is that fear doesn't disappear with time. It feeds on waiting. Each day you postpone the step you know you need to take. You strengthen the voice of doubt. But each time you act, even if the result isn't perfect, you send a powerful message to yourself. I trust myself. And that's the kind of energy that changes the frequency of your life. Hill said that courage is not something you find, it is something you build. And it is built precisely in moments when fear seems greatest. Because it is when you decide to act, even without guarantees, that you discover you are much stronger than you imagined. Action has an almost magical effect on the mind. It interrupts the cycle of worry and transforms anxiety into clarity. You stop asking, "What if it goes wrong?" and start thinking, "What can I learn from this?" This shift is what separates those who live dreaming from those who live achieving. There are people who spend their entire lives waiting for fear to pass before taking the first step. They expect courage to suddenly appear like a divine lightning bolt. But it doesn't come. Courage is not bestowed, it is cultivated. And the first step, however small, is always the most important because it breaks the pattern of paralysis. When you act, fear retreats. When you continue, fear disappears. And when you look back and see all you have overcome, it loses its power forever. Napoleon Hill clearly observed this when studying hundreds of leaders and entrepreneurs who achieved success amidst uncertainty. None of them began with total confidence. They began with action. Because they understood that fear does not disappear with time, but dissolves with movement. Fear is a shadow. The more you run from it, the larger it seems. But if you walk towards the light of action, it shrinks until it vanishes. Confidence is not something you receive as a prize. It is something you earn through constant practice. It's like training an invisible muscle. With each challenge faced, it grows. Each time you fulfill a promise made to yourself, it strengthens. And there comes a point when fear, which once controlled you, becomes merely a reminder of how much you have evolved. Therefore, if there is something you have been postponing, something you know needs to be done but fear prevents, do it now. Take the first step, even a small one, even while trembling, because fear only survives in immobility. In movement, it dissolves. And when it disappears, you will realize that courage was always there, within you, just waiting for you to start moving. There is a fear that almost no one admits, the fear of standing out. It seems strange, doesn't it? People say they want success, freedom, recognition. But deep down, many sabotage themselves because they associate growth with losing something, losing acceptance, comfort, the routine they know. How many times have you noticed that you started making progress in an area and suddenly felt an invisible force pulling you back? It's the fear of leaving the group, the fear of being judged, the fear of not knowing how to handle your own power. Napoleon Hill called this unconscious self-sabotage and said it is one of the greatest silent enemies of success. This fear is subtle. It doesn't shout. It disguises itself as modesty or caution. You start to think, perhaps I'm moving too fast. Maybe I don't deserve this yet. What if it works out and I can't handle it? And then, without realizing it, you begin to slow your own pace, to doubt decisions that once seemed certain. The mind creates small justifications that seem reasonable, but have a single objective: to keep you where you are. Neuroscience explains this phenomenon. The human brain is programmed to seek familiarity, not happiness. It prefers what is predictable, even if it causes you suffering, to something new that might generate growth. Napoleon Hill experienced this force when he was invited by Andrew Carnegie to interview the most successful men of the era and create a philosophy of success. They start over-justifying themselves, asking permission to be who they are. This guilt over success is more common than it seems. A Harvard Business Review study showed that nearly 70% of successful people experience what's known as imposter syndrome, that constant feeling that they don't deserve what they have achieved. And the most tragic part is that this guilt makes them retreat, wasting potential that could inspire others. He almost refused. He was afraid he wasn't up to the task, afraid of being just another writer. But Carnegie made him see that the true failure would be to say no to his own destiny. Hill accepted, and that yes changed the course of his life and millions of others. It's curious how this pattern repeats itself in ordinary people. Someone begins to prosper and, unconsciously, dims their own light so as not to bother others. Hill said that the only way to overcome this internal resistance is to accept your own power as a responsibility, not as a burden. When you understand that your growth doesn't diminish anyone, on the contrary, it inspires, fear begins to dissolve. Success is no longer about separation. It becomes a beacon that illuminates. Think of how many lives have been impacted because someone had the courage to stand out. Inventors, artists, entrepreneurs, spiritual teachers. Each one of them, at some point, felt a fear of being too much, but they understood that hiding their talent is a form of selfishness. The world needs what you carry within you. And here's a powerful detail. True humility isn't about diminishing yourself. It's about recognizing your own greatness and putting it to service. The fear of standing out often stems from a limited belief that success is synonymous with vanity. But Hill reminds us that success is synonymous with contribution. When you grow, you create opportunities for others to grow as well. It's like lighting a candle. It doesn't lose its own flame by lighting others, it merely multiplies the light. So, if you feel afraid to stand out, remember this. Wanting to win isn't arrogance, it's courage. Desiring abundance isn't ego, it's consciousness. Every time you choose to hold yourself back to avoid judgment, you are denying the gift you were given. And life doesn't reward those who hide their brilliance, but those who use it to illuminate the path for others. Try a simple test. Over the next 7 days, observe every time you feel the urge to shrink back, to silence your own opinion, to not share an idea, or to apologize for something good you've achieved. In each of those moments, take a deep breath and tell yourself, I have the right to shine. It may seem small, but it's this kind of affirmation that begins to reprogram your subconscious. Because when you accept your light, fear loses its power. And it's in that instant that you begin to live, not just with courage, but with purpose. Fear isn't your enemy. It's merely a sign that you're growing. Whenever you feel that tightness in your chest, that impulse to retreat, remember, it's your old self trying to keep you trapped in your comfort zone. And it's exactly in that instant that you need to push forward. Because every time you face fear, you don't just win an internal battle, you take a real step toward the person you were born to be. Courage isn't the absence of insecurity, it's the decision to move forward despite it. This is how you transform fear into motion, doubt into action, and insecurity into strength. And if you've made it this far, you've already taken a step ahead of most. Keep going. The next video appearing on your screen will guide you even deeper into this process of self-mastery and expansion, helping you climb another step in your wisdom's evolution and become 1% better than you are right now. Thank you for being here, for having the courage to seek your best self, and I'll see you in the next video.